Welcome to another Animation Power Tips. This episode, it's all about scripts or plugins for Maya. We have a really good question by Max, and I think it's really interesting for all of you out there that want to actually get stuck into plugins. The answer is actually simpler than it seems. So let's get stuck in, let's get started. First and foremost, I have to give a huge thanks to Autodesk for sponsoring this video. They are the sponsors of this whole series of Animation Power Tips, and they've been there from the very beginning on this channel, supporting me, and I highly appreciate all the support that they give us for me to actually keep on, not only keep going with this channel, but also with this series for all of you and sharing some tips and tricks that I think you guys are gonna enjoy a lot. Now, for this episode in particular, Max submitted a video, and just before we get in, just so you know, you all can submit a video, doesn't matter who it is, and doesn't matter what level you are in Maya or animation, you can submit your questions via video. Make sure to actually check examples on a previous video that I made to tell you guys how to submit your video, and also there's a link down below in this video so you guys can submit your questions so I can answer them here in this series and hopefully shed some light on some of the questions that you guys have. Now, Max asks a really good question about plugins and also mocap. So let's hear it. Take it away, Max.
Hey, what's up, Harvey? This is Max. I live in the UK and I've got a couple of questions for you. The first one is, how do you polish your animation in Maya? What tool do you use? Personally, I use a lot the motion trail to clean the arc, make the animation flow better. Another one is, I've never done motion capture in Maya. Pretty sure we can do that. Never done it personally, so if you have any tips, tricks on how to do it, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in this. Anyway, stay safe and peace.
Alright, so plugins and Maya. Now, it's very interesting because I feel like one of the things that you do as an animator as you get started in animation is most likely look at what kind of plugins are most useful to you. And then when you find one or two or three, you normally want to get more. And this is part of your journey as an animator. It's impossible to resist because it's almost like candy for us animators to have a good plugin and then go in, test it out and see how that fits within your own workflow. Now, it might surprise all of you, maybe not the ones that have been following the channel for a little bit, but I don't use a lot of plugins. I don't use a lot of scripts. I don't use a lot of aids to animate. I have about 5 scripts or plugins that I actually use all the time, and they do more than enough that I need for my animation. And so far I haven't had the need to actually have more than that. I had a student that asked me this question not long ago in my workshop, and he basically asked, just like Max did, what kind of plugins do you use the most, what kind of plugins are the most beneficial for your workflow professionally, all that stuff. To all of you getting started, do test out your plugins in your scripts to see what fits with your needs. But like everything else in animation, in Maya, in 3D, plugins and scripts are there to help you, but they only help you if you know what you're doing. And the reason why I'm saying this is because they can become a crutch that you get used to, and without that script or plugin, you don't know what to do. And that is pretty bad, because what happens is that whenever you change studios or you change places that you work, you most likely not going to have that plugin, or you're going to have something similar that doesn't really work exactly the same way. So you need to be able to adapt to whatever the studio works with. If you have it as a professional at a later stage when you know exactly what you're doing, this saves you time and speeds up your process. But if you have the plugin at a very early stage, what ends up happening is that because you don't have a solid foundation in animation and a solid workflow, you will actually use it as a crutch. So for example, Twin Machine, it's one of the most popular, the most known plugins ever, right, in animation. And it came out like years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. I remember perfectly when it came out, I was using it to no end. Now, Twin machine is very simple. You have a pose here, you have a pose here, and then you go to the middle and you have a scrub button, and then you scrub and you get an in-between, exactly in between these two keys that gives you like what's going to happen in between, right? I mean, pretty simple. Now, if you actually like me and you were using it at a very early stage, every single in-between is going to be 50% of the pose before and the pose after. Now, what that's going to give you, it's even timing throughout your animation. So as you can see, you're using a plugin, but it's actually detrimental to your animations, because if you don't have enough keys in between, so key 0 and key 10, and the key number 5, it's going to be 50% of those two keys, then it means that you're not favoring anything, and you're not really working on your poses in order to make it as interesting as possible. This is what I mean about having plugins being a bit of a crutch, and sometimes if you use it at an early stage, it might be detrimental to your skills. Having said all that, keep that in mind as we go through these plugins. I will tell you about 4 or 5 of the ones that I use the most, and how I use them and why they're beneficial to my workflow. Let's get stuck in. Now, as you can see here, I have my Maya open, and on the last week's episode, I actually showcased you guys about cleaning up animation in mocap. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check the previous episode, episode number 1 of season 2, and I kind of show a little bit of how I actually go about cleaning up a little bit of the mocap. And if you need more information, I have about 1 or 2 other videos that specifically talk about cleaning up mocap and how I go about it. However, I have this open to showcase the plugin that I probably use the most out of them all, and that is Red 9. And the reason why I use Red 9 so much is actually mostly for one thing, one little tool that I use the most, and that is track and stabilize. I don't really use parenting of objects to others, and I don't really use IK-FK switch. And the reason why I don't use it is because this Euler, right, gimbal, there's a lot of gimbal that happens when you go from like parenting one object to the other, and most importantly when you actually go from IK to FK. We all experienced it. You actually kind of put that hand in IK, and then you switch it to FK over one frame, and then when you actually go to your graph editor to clean up your data, it's all a mess. That doesn't help anybody. So I animate with my hands in IK at all times, pretty much. Very rarely do I change it. So they look pretty much like this, right, my hands. And then if I actually want to track an object to it, right, let me just say, let me create a sphere right here. Actually, no, let's say, even better, create a locator, because that's pretty generic, right? So if I want to kind of like track the motion of this hand, so this hand is doing, let me just get the data properly. This hand is actually kind of like making this movement here, and I want to track it. And the reason why I want to track it is because I want to put a weapon on the hand, or I want to put a sphere or an object on the hand, anything like that. So I want that information that I have on the wrist to be on this locator. Let's say this locator is a weapon, right? So the very first thing that I do, and this is why I use Red 9 so much, it's snap one object to the other. Now, Maya has been around for a long time, and unfortunately one thing that I haven't seen them do, and I really need Autodesk to actually get on top of this, I hope they get on top of this, it's get a snapping from object to object. And that can happen both in translation, rotation, give us some options kind of thing. So Autodesk, please get on top of that. Because what happens is that if you actually want to do this and this, and you want to snap an object to the other, you need to use external plugins. So Red 9 has one called Simple Snap, and it's right here on the free version of Red 9. So if you do that, as you can see, now I've snapped the locator to the pivot of that hand. So now they're actually in the exact same position. Now, right now, they're not tracking each other because it was only over that one frame. Now, I really want this locator to follow the information that you have in this wrist. So for that, this is why I use track and stabilize, and I'm just going to minimize all this to avoid confusion to everybody. This track and stabilize, because if I actually take time range, which means that signifies this bit here on the bottom, and then translates and rotates means that it's going to copy all the translation and rotation or whatever the hand is doing, and I click process forward. Look what happens. So nothing happened visually on the viewport, but now that information, it's all on that wrist. Pretty cool, right? You can use that for a number of things, and this is why it's so versatile. And another reason why to use it is that if you actually change this position of this locator to any place that you want, let's say you want to put it here, it tracks and stabilizes based on the offset of the two objects. So if you click parent and then click slave, those two objects, because they offset from each other, are gonna track and stabilize based on that offset. So I'll do it again so you guys can see what the result. So now it's tracking and stabilizing, but as you can see, it's actually doing it based on the offset that exists. So what this means is that if you have a weapon, if you have an object of any kind, and you place it correctly in the hand, and then you select the wrist, and then you select the object, it means that that object will always stay in the hand. And then further to that, if you want to do it over a section only, let's just like select everything and delete it. So select that, select the timeline, and then delete keys. So now I have nothing on the locator. So let's say I just want to do it over a section of time. So once again, I can click parent, I can click parent, I can click slave, and I can select the section that I want to copy specifically. So I want to like copy just this bit here. Because this is highlighted, because there's a time range here, if I actually click process, it will only do this section here. And this is specifically good for example, when you have an object that you're grabbing for a certain period of time and then you're throwing it away, let's say. So you're grabbing, for example, a knife, grab it, throw it away. So this whole movement needs to be tracked and stabilized until the point that you let go. And at that point, this bit of the fall, you can animate yourself separate from the hand. But all of this needs to happen like at the same time. So this, once again, very, very useful. So that's plugin number one that I use. For plugin number two, I will say is KEYFRAME MP. And for KEYFRAME MP, I'm actually going to just put here a section of a video that I've done ages ago that talks about how to connect KEYFRAME MP to Maya so you can scrub your timeline. And KEYFRAME MP and Maya are synced 100%. This is just a snippet, so make sure to actually go back and watch the whole video. Let's do it. One of the things that you can do with KEYFRAME MP Pro is that you can draw on top of it. As soon as you stop drawing on top of it, as you can see, the key went green. The one thing that I use KEYFRAME MP the most is for this, that you can connect the player to your Maya and have both your timeline and the timeline of the player synced. So the only thing you have to do is scrub Maya, which is kind of magic if you ask me, but it works amazing. Right, so that was KEYFRAME MP, very, very useful tool, and I highly recommend it. Now the second one that I use, and this is more for when I go to studios, they don't have a very developed pipeline, they don't have a lot of tools, and basically they are lacking in a lot of stuff. When I go to a studio like that and I see no tools whatsoever, first thing that I install is ANIMBOT. I love ANIMBOT. Alan Camillo is doing an amazing job at actually kind of improving the tool. He's a good friend. We interviewed him here in the channel ages ago, so make sure you actually watch that because it was very interesting. He's now doing the tool full-time, really nice guy. And I'll actually add here a little bit of a snippet of when I demonstrated ANIMBOT here in this channel ages ago. Here's a tool that I use all the time, which is called Select Sets. Select Sets is basically this floating shelf, and this is basically what you want to select on a character. So it's almost like, because you don't have a picker by default in Maya, this is almost like your picker. You select the sets that you want to select. So in this case, it's spine 1, spine 2, neck, elbow, hips, the head. and it's an easy selection for you to go into different parts of the body. Now, last but not least, I have more of a suggestion than a must for a plugin. It's this excellent plugin that Luis Miguel Herrera, a good friend of mine that we used to work together ages ago, put together, that basically does exactly the same thing as the Track and Stabilize that I showed you right at the beginning, but it does it on a standalone kind of version. So you can put it on your shelf, you can either click or double click and get options. It's very well put together. Luis Me is really good at putting plugins together, and if you actually don't want to download the whole of Red 9 in order to kind of use this one tool, then go and check out Luis Me's LM Locator. I use LM Locator when I don't have Red 9 available. So here's a little clip of that tool. If I just want to create a locator in this one position, you just click the button on the shelf once, and you have a locator right there. So it just creates one locator at origin of that one object, so you can do whatever you want with it. And that's it. That's the tools that I use a lot. Those are the ones that I normally install for one reason or another. Keep in mind that I don't install them every single time that I go to a studio, because I found that most studios have these tools already built in, and if they haven't, you can go to a technical animator or the rigging and pipeline department and just ask for these tools. It takes them no time to actually create these tools for you, as long as you have a good reason and you can show them, look, this thing does this, can we have the same thing internally? I'm pretty sure they can do it. Now, all these tools are brilliant. Make sure you go and support the creators. They are amazing people, amazing professionals that have been doing it for a long time. And as I mentioned in the beginning, as your journey, it's normal for you to kind of discover and make sure that you actually find tools that fit your own workflow. Every animator has his own workflow, so you definitely need to discover. The fact that I use very little plugins doesn't mean that you have to. It's just the way that I found best for me to focus on my craft and make sure it doesn't distract from how hard animation is. Because animation is hard. You should craft every single pose, every single key, and make sure that Maya doesn't give anything for free as you're actually animating. As long as you do that, you can use as many plugins and scripts as you want. As mentioned in the beginning as well, make sure to actually send me your questions. I'll leave a link down below where you can upload your videos, and then hopefully you're gonna get featured in one feature video like Max was today, and I can answer your question for you guys. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoy yourselves. Many thanks to my Patreons for supporting me as usual, and also Autodesk for sponsoring this series. See you guys next week, and until then, stay well, stay safe. Peace.